right, so we are here in Ocala, Florida, which is about an hour south of Gainesville, where we're based out of, and we're about to install some 3D printed parts on a Ferrari. Not just any Ferrari, a 1983 limited edition Ferrari Mondial.
Because of the modifications I'm making, it would be very difficult for me to machine like the caps that we're looking at right now. The sunroof parts would be impossible. They're no longer available in most cases. So if you want your sunroof to work, I needed to go outside for help for that. And then again, the time and the cost to make machined caps would be really prohibitive. So then got talking with some folks, Dan in particular, and the printing came up. I'm like, sure, let's give it a try.
So I used to work with Jeff at InVivo. He hired me into his department just a little while before he left. And we've kept in touch since he retired. And I just mentioned that I had gotten some new 3D printers and some new capabilities to him one day when I saw him doing things on these cars. And I said, hey, you know, if you need anything, just reach out to me and let me know. And within about 10 minutes, Jeff said, hey, I've got something for you. So that was it. I took a trip down here and we looked at all the parts, and there you go. We're making parts for a Ferrari.
I was super excited. I love cars. I've been a car guy since I can remember. Every car magazine there was out there I was subscribed to as a kid, and every new car usually that came out, I knew, you know, engine displacement and tire size and things like that. So when I heard that there was a project involving 3D printing in cars, I was beyond excited to get started on it and see what we could do and help out with.
Yes, when I worked at InVivo, we had some folks doing 3D printed parts for us. And before I left, I was trying to talk management into doing 3D printed parts. We used a lot of small plastic components that we would have machined. So I was trying to convince them to, when we had a use of 50 parts per year, just print them, don't machine them.
I'm 3D printing for probably coming up on 2 years now. I have a few hobby machines at home. I've added slice engineering components to them to upgrade them. Excellent materials, actually excellent print qualities and stuff coming from those slice stuff. So a lot of hobby stuff, like most people. I've gotten into 3D design, so I've picked up the 3D CAD and stuff like that, SolidWorks, Fusion 360, things like that. So anything I find around the house that needs to be placed or needs to be modified, or I need a mount for this or in my car for that, I 3D print it.
Again, I'll save a ton of money, a ton of time, and now that I see what can be done with them, I already have a couple other things that I'd like to talk with you guys about getting printed before we're done here today.
I think it's kind of one of those things where if you have a hammer, everything's a nail. So I have the 3D printer, and I kind of reached out to Jeff because I was actually looking for something else to do. All my hobby stuff around the house was kind of drying up. I didn't have too much going on. So I told Jeff, I was like, if you'd like me to do anything, let me know. You know, I know you're working on this stuff, so you know, we'll hook up with that. And it's worked out really well. It let me do a little more practicing, a little more honing of my 3D design skills. And I've actually learned a lot more with the 3D printing too, with these new materials that I'd never printed with before, the Nylon 12, the Nylon X, things like that. So
the parts were printed with a variety of nylon filaments, because nylon just does a really good job in a heat sensitive atmosphere where there's going to be a lot of heat applied in the end use application. And so we used a couple different carbon fiber reinforced nylon materials to print these parts, and they were printed with our copperhead upgrades on a Race 3D Pro 2 and E2 machine, as well as with our nozzles on an Intamsys FunMat HT, and also with our hot ends and nozzles, our Mosquito Magnum hot end on a Tronxy machine. So you're really looking at a wide range of different printers that are all basically accomplishing a similar goal, from sort of hobbyist, you know, maker, less expensive machine up to more of a prosumer style machine with the Race 3D units, all the way up to the very industrial and professional machine like FunMat HT that is still using our components and improving the capacity of all of those machines across the board.
We did like the sunroof parts. There are a bunch of little tiny clips and slides that break and the sunroof doesn't work. So that's what Dan was running for me in the beginning. And then we talked about, on the other side here, I used to have distributors. The distributors are going away. We're going to do coil on plug. So there's spinning parts in there, and I needed something to cover up those parts. So they're the ends of the camshafts, actually. So in order to be able to do that, I had to have some type of covering to put on those. And again, if I had to machine them, I don't think I could do them myself. And then to find somebody that would do them at a reasonable cost, I don't think that was going to happen either. And when I started this, I definitely knew I wanted to go coil on plug, but I never even thought about, okay, I'm going to get rid of the distributors. I didn't want to put the distributor caps back on there. I mean, that would just be stupid. So it's got to look right from my perspective. But I never even thought of it until one day I'm like, oh, what do we do now? So it's a big help.
When we heard that Dan was having trouble printing some nylon parts, and nylon is really a great material for any application where you're going to be having some heat. Like for example, in this case, we've got a sunroof. Obviously the sun's beating down on those parts. It's going to cause most plastics to get brittle over time. We're also using parts in this case in an engine bay. So nylon's really an ideal material for this setup without going too expensive and getting too exotic on the materials list. So but printing nylon is a little bit tricky, and most sort of off-the-shelf machines either can't do a great job with it, or there's a lot of warping issues. So really one of our specialties has been dealing with more exotic materials like a nylon as compared to a PLA or a PETG, and getting machines that are more accessible to the average consumer or hobbyist or maker, and allowing them to print those materials using our components.
For guys and girls that have the older cars and bikes, it's going to be a huge advantage for them because parts aren't available. Many people cannot machine their own parts, so they have to find a machine shop that's willing to make 1 or 2 parts for them at a huge cost, even if they'll do it. So I think that the printing aspect will help, again, especially folks with the older cars, to get parts printed that, you know, and it may not be a structural part, but it's a part you need anyways.
As the machines continue to advance more, I think you're going to find a lot more people that have these kind of things either in small shops that can be rented out, or in their own, you know, shops if they have the personal capabilities to make just about anything. You can make parts that you just can't make by machining, or that take excessive amounts of time and material and cost in machining, where the 3D printing just cuts down the time, cuts down the material costs. You can make just about anything. You know, you can make shapes and designs that you really can't get to with standard machining practices.
So the auto industry has really been leading the charge in a lot of ways on utilization of 3D printing. If you look at the new Corvette, the C8 Corvette, there are several 3D printed parts on that car, as well as in the development process, GM used a ton of 3D printing, and that's actually one of the ways that they shortened the development cycle of the C8 Corvette versus the preceding generations. So that's really exciting from an industry perspective. And then from a hobby or maker perspective, on the back end in the enthusiast community, you're going to just see a huge proliferation, I think, of people understanding how they can use 3D printing, and as they get into more exotic materials, more engineering grade materials, the end-use applications really open up where you can do something like print an air intake and install it on your engine and actually be functional and do a better job potentially than something that was designed or manufactured with traditional methods. And then there's all kinds of other little brackets and things that break down in a vehicle, especially if you're, I've messed with some older BMWs or Minis, and there's a lot of just little tiny fiddly parts that break, and those things you can go buy for really expensive on the aftermarket, or if you can print them yourself, it really makes a huge difference. Or potentially it's a part that isn't even in production at all, like in the case with this older Ferrari, an 80s Ferrari. You can't find those parts. So I think there's just really a huge opportunity as people learn more and more about 3D printing and being able to utilize this technology to really change the game for people that are passionate about automotive things and vehicles in general.